In the vast emptiness of space aboard a research vessel called the Celestial Horizon, Dr. Laura Bennett walked through the narrow corridors with careful steps. Her shoes made soft sounds against the metal floor as she moved from one room to another, checking on the health of the crew. Laura was not like most people who dreamed of adventure among the stars. She was quiet, thoughtful, and preferred the company of her medical equipment over large gatherings. Yet, here she was, millions of miles away from Earth, surrounded by the hum of machinery and the distant chatter of her colleagues. The Celestial Horizon had been sent on a mission to explore uncharted regions of the galaxy. For weeks, the crew had scanned moons, asteroids, and gas giants, hoping to find something new. Most days were routine, mapping coordinates, collecting samples, and running tests. But today felt different. There was an energy in the air, a sense that something unusual was about to happen. It started when the ship's sensors detected a strange object buried beneath layers of crystalline rock on a nearby moon. The captain, Ryan Mitchell, ordered a team to investigate. Laura wasn't usually part of such missions, but she volunteered this time, curious about what they might find. As the shuttle descended onto the moon's surface, its jagged landscape stretched out before them, glowing faintly under the light of a distant sun. The team worked quickly, using drills and tools to uncover the object. It was a pod, smooth and metallic with intricate patterns etched into its surface. When they finally opened it, everyone froze. Inside lay a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. Its body shimmered with iridescent scales, and its veins glowed faintly blue. It was clearly injured, its breathing shallow and labored. This was no ordinary alien. It was the queen of a species known as the Vryn. The Vryn were infamous throughout the galaxy. They were reclusive, rarely seen or heard from, and their encounters with other species often ended in violence. No one knew much about them, except that they valued their privacy above all else. Finding their queen in such a vulnerable state was both shocking and terrifying. Captain Mitchell immediately ordered the team to return to the ship, taking the queen with them. Back aboard the Celestial Horizon, the crew set up a quarantine area in the medical bay. Laura insisted on examining the queen herself. She approached cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. The queen's eyes fluttered open briefly, locking onto Laura's face. There was intelligence there, a depth that unsettled her. As Laura leaned closer to examine the queen's wounds, something extraordinary happened. The injuries began to heal rapidly, almost as if responding to her presence. But at the same moment, the plants in the corner of the room wilted and turned black. A small insect crawling across the floor stopped moving entirely. Laura stepped back, horrified. Whatever was happening, it seemed to be connected to her. Tests confirmed what Laura feared. Her blood contained a unique enzyme, one that was incredibly volatile. It acted as a catalyst for regeneration in certain conditions but proved fatal to nearly every other form of life it touched. This discovery sent shockwaves through the crew. Some saw Laura as a potential savior, especially given the Queen's critical condition. Others viewed her as a threat, worried about the implications of her abilities. News of the Queen's presence reached Earth Command, which demanded that the Celestial Horizon deliver her immediately for further study. However, before any plans could be made, trouble arrived in the form of rogue mercenaries. These were ruthless individuals who operated outside the law, willing to do whatever it took to claim valuable assets for themselves. Their target was clear: the Queen. The mercenaries launched a surprise attack on the Celestial Horizon, boarding the ship with weapons drawn. Chaos erupted as the crew scrambled to defend themselves. Amid the confusion, Laura managed to slip away. Dragging the Queen into a secure section of the medical bay, she locked the door behind her, knowing they wouldn't have much time before the mercenaries broke through. While hiding, Laura tried to calm her racing thoughts. She couldn't understand why her blood affected the Queen differently than everything else. Was it some kind of biological anomaly? Or was there more to the Vryn than anyone realized? As she pondered these questions, the Queen stirred again. This time Laura felt a strange sensation in her mind, as though someone was speaking to her without words. Images flashed before her eyes. Memories of the Queen's people, struggling against a mysterious plague that was wiping them out. Laura realized then that the Queen wasn't just a random casualty. She was the key to saving her entire species. And somehow Laura's blood held the answer. Though fear still lingered in her heart, she knew she couldn't turn away. If there was even a chance she could help, she had to try. Outside the medical bay, the battle raged on. Captain Mitchell and his remaining crew fought valiantly to hold off the mercenaries, but it was clear they were outnumbered. Laura knew she couldn't rely on them forever. She needed a plan, and fast. Thankfully, she wasn't alone. Lieutenant Daniel Brooks, a steadfast officer with a strong moral compass, had slipped away from the fight to check on her. Together, they began brainstorming ways to escape the mercenaries and protect the Queen. Their alliance was uneasy at first. Daniel questioned whether helping the Vryn was worth the risk to humanity. After all, the enzyme in Laura's blood was unpredictable and its effects could spiral out of control. But Laura argued that abandoning the Queen would make them no better than the mercenaries hunting them. Slowly, Daniel came around to her way of thinking. He respected her determination and agreed to help however he could. With Daniel's assistance, Laura prepared for the next step. They gathered supplies and mapped out a route to a smaller scout ship docked nearby. It wouldn't be easy to reach it undetected, but it was their best chance of escaping the mercenaries and finding a safe place to treat the Queen. As they finalized their plans, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far bigger than she could imagine. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders, yet she refused to give in to doubt. She had always believed in the power of compassion and understanding, even in the face of fear. Now those beliefs were being put to the ultimate test. Whatever happened next, Laura knew one thing for certain. She couldn't let the Queen, or her people, down. Laura and Daniel moved quickly through the shadows of the celestial horizon, their footsteps muffled by the hum of the ship's systems. The Queen lay motionless on a makeshift stretcher, her glowing veins dimmer now but still pulsing faintly, with life. They knew they didn't have much time. The mercenaries were growing bolder, their shouts echoing down the corridors as they searched for the alien Queen and Laura. The two humans reached the airlock leading to the scout ship, a small vessel designed for short-range travel. Laura glanced back at the Queen, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that this creature held secrets far greater than she could comprehend. Yet despite the danger, Laura felt an unexplainable connection to her. It wasn't just about the enzyme in her blood or the strange images the Queen had shown her. There was something deeper, something almost human. Daniel worked the controls to open the airlock, his hand steady even as sweat dripped from his brow. "We're running out of time," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. The sound of boots stomping closer made both of them freeze. Laura clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay calm. They couldn't afford mistakes now. Once inside the scout ship, Laura secured the Queen in a narrow compartment while Daniel prepared for launch. The engines roared to life, and within moments, they were detaching from the celestial horizon. Through the viewport, Laura watched as the larger ship grew smaller behind them. The mercenaries fired shots in their direction, but the scout ship was nimble, weaving through the debris fields surrounding the moon. As they entered the emptiness of space, Laura finally allowed herself to breathe, but her relief was short-lived. The Queen stirred again, her eyes opening fully this time. Her gaze locked onto Laura, and once more Laura felt that strange sensation in her mind. A flood of emotions and fragmented thoughts. Pain, desperation, hope. The Queen was trying to communicate. "She's showing me something," Laura said, her voice trembling. Daniel turned to look at her, his expression tense. "What is it?" "It's her people," Laura replied. "They're dying. A plague is spreading through their colony and they don't know how to stop it." She paused, struggling to make sense of the jumbled images in her head. "She thinks my blood can save them." Daniel frowned, his hands gripping the controls tightly. "And what if she's wrong? What if using your blood makes things worse?" We don't even know what we're dealing with here. I can't just leave them to die, Laura shot back. Her tone softened as she added, I've seen what happens when someone gives up on another species. I won't let that happen again. Daniel sighed, shaking his head. He wanted to argue, but he knew Laura was right. Turning away would mean abandoning everything they stood for as explorers and healers. Still, the risks were enormous. If the enzyme in Laura's blood caused harm instead of healing, the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for the Vryn, but for humanity as well. For hours, they traveled in silence, the vastness of space, stretching endlessly around them. The Queen remained still, her breathing shallow but steady. Laura kept checking on her, monitoring her condition, and trying to piece together the fragments of information she had received. She knew they needed to reach the Vryn colony soon, but finding it wouldn't be easy. The species was notoriously secretive, and their homeworlds were hidden deep within uncharted regions of the galaxy. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Queen's telepathic voice returned, clearer this time. She showed Laura a series of coordinates, guiding them toward a distant star system. Laura relayed the information to Daniel, who plotted the course into the ship's navigation system. How long until we get there? She asked. About 12 hours, Daniel replied, assuming we don't run into any trouble along the way. Trouble came sooner than expected. As they approached the edge of the star system, warning alarms blared throughout the ship. A massive vessel loomed ahead, its sleek design unmistakably belonging to the mercenaries. Somehow they had tracked the scout ship and were waiting to ambush them. They must have tagged us before we left the celestial horizon, Daniel muttered, his jaw tightening. He scanned the control panel, looking for options. We're outnumbered and outgunned. We'll never win a fight against them. Then we don't fight, Laura said firmly. She pointed to a nearby asteroid belt. Take us in there. We can use the rocks as cover and try to lose them. Daniel hesitated for a moment, then nodded. With precision, he maneuvered the scout ship into the dense field of asteroids. The mercenaries followed, their larger ship struggling to keep up in the tight spaces. Rocks tumbled past the viewport, narrowly missing the hull as Daniel pushed the engines to their limit. Laura stayed close to the Queen, shielding her body with her own as the ship rocked violently from near collisions. Despite the chaos, she felt a strange sense of purpose. For the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to truly fight for something bigger than herself. She wasn't just protecting the Queen, she was fighting for the survival of an entire species. After what felt like an eternity, the scout ship emerged on the other side of the asteroid belt. The mercenaries' vessel was nowhere in sight. Whether they had given up or lost track of them, Laura didn't know, and she didn't care. All that mattered was reaching the Vryn colony. When they arrived, the sight took Laura's breath away. Nestled within the orbit of a pale blue gas giant was a sprawling network of crystalline structures, shimmering like jewels under the light of a nearby star. The colony was breathtakingly beautiful, yet there was an air of sadness about it. Ships drifted aimlessly in the distance, their lights dimmed. It was clear the plague had taken a heavy toll. As they approached, a group of Vryn ships intercepted them, weapons trained on the scout ship. Laura raised her hands in a gesture of peace, though she doubted they could see her through the thick glass of the viewport. We're here to help, she said aloud, hoping the Queen would convey her message. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the Vryn ships parted, allowing them to pass. The scout ship landed on a platform near the center of the colony, where dozens of Vryn gathered, their glowing forms casting eerie shadows across the ground. Some carried weapons, their distrust evident. Others looked weak and frail, their bodies ravaged by the plague. The Queen was carried off the ship by a team of Vryn medics who whisked her away to a nearby structure. Laura and Daniel followed cautiously, aware of the hostile stares directed at them. When they entered the building, they found themselves face to face with the Vryn elders, towering figures with intricate markings etched into their scales. Their eyes glowed brighter than the others, radiating authority. One of the elders stepped forward, addressing Laura telepathically. "You bring death," it said, its voice cold and accusatory. "Your presence endangers us all." Laura swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She looked at Daniel, who gave her a slight nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, she responded, "I bring hope. My blood can heal your people, but only if you trust me." The room fell silent. The elders exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Finally, one of them spoke again. "Prove it." Laura nodded, knowing this was her chance. She rolled up her sleeve and extended her arm. "Take what you need," she said, "but promise me you'll use it wisely." The Vryn hesitated, then approached her cautiously. One of them drew a sample of her blood, handling it with great care. Laura watched as they analyzed it, her stomach churning with anticipation. She didn't know if this would work, or if it would doom them all. But she had made her choice, and there was no turning back now. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity. Then finally one of the elders nodded. "It is as you say," it said. "Your blood holds the key to our survival." Relief washed over Laura, but she knew the hardest part was yet to come. Saving the Vryn wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But for the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. Together, she and Daniel had crossed the stars to help a species on the brink of extinction. And now they would do whatever it took to see them through. The Queen appeared at the doorway, her strength returning thanks to Laura's earlier treatments. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of gratitude. Laura returned the gesture, her resolve stronger than ever. Whatever happened next, she was ready. The Vryn colony was a place of both beauty and despair. Its crystalline towers reflected the dim light of the nearby gas giant, casting shimmering patterns across the ground. But beneath the surface, the signs of suffering were everywhere. The plague had ravaged the population, leaving many too weak to move. Some lay in makeshift shelters, their glowing veins fading as the illness consumed them. Laura and Daniel stood in the center of it all, surrounded by wary eyes. The Vryn elders had agreed to let them stay, but trust was still fragile. Every step they took was watched closely, every action scrutinized. Laura understood their caution. After all, she carried something that could either save or destroy them. The weight of that responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. The first task was testing the enzyme in Laura's blood. The Vryn scientists worked tirelessly, analyzing samples and running simulations. Laura stayed by their side, answering questions and offering insights whenever she could. She knew time was critical. If they didn't find a way to use the enzyme safely, the colony would be lost. Daniel helped where he could, though his role was more observational than hands-on. He spent hours watching the Vryn at work, marveling at their advanced technology and methods. Yet even with their expertise, progress was slow. The enzyme was volatile, reacting unpredictably under different conditions. One wrong calculation could render it useless or worse, deadly. As days passed, Laura grew weaker. Each extraction of her blood left her pale and exhausted. She tried to hide her fatigue, knowing the Vryn needed her strength. But Daniel noticed. "You can't keep doing this," he said one evening as they sat together in a quiet corner of the lab. "You're pushing yourself too hard." "I don't have a choice," Laura replied, her voice firm despite her weariness. "If I stop, now we lose everything." Daniel frowned, his frustration evident. "And what happens when you can't give anymore? What then?" Laura didn't answer. She didn't know. All she could think about was the faces of the sick Vryn, their eyes filled with pain and fear. She couldn't abandon them, not when she held the key to their survival. Finally, after countless trials, the scientists found a way to stabilize the enzyme. They developed a treatment that could be administered directly to the infected. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The next step was testing it on a living subject, a Vryn child who had been brought to the brink of death by the plague. Laura insisted on being present for the procedure. As the child lay motionless on the examination table, she felt a lump rise in her throat. This was it, the moment of truth. If the treatment failed, it would shatter the fragile trust they had built. If it succeeded, it might just save an entire species. The Vryn medic injected the serum into the child's arm, his movements precise and steady. Laura held her breath, watching closely for any sign of change. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the child's breathing steadied. The faint glow in their veins brightened, spreading warmth throughout their small body. Tears welled up in Laura's eyes as she realized it was working. The room erupted in murmurs of astonishment. Even the elders, who had remained stoic throughout the process, showed signs of relief. One of them approached Laura, its glowing eyes locking onto hers. "You have done what we could not," it said, its telepathic voice tinged with gratitude. "For this, we are in your debt." But Laura shook her head. "I didn't do this alone. We did it together." Despite the breakthrough, the work was far from over. The treatment needed to be mass-produced and distributed across the colony. Laura and Daniel trained the Vryn scientists, teaching them how to replicate the enzyme synthetically. It was a painstaking process requiring patience and precision. Yet, with each passing day, more lives were saved. Still, tensions lingered. Not everyone trusted Laura. Some Vryn viewed her as a threat, fearing her blood might doom their species if misused. The elders worked to quell these fears, reminding their people of the sacrifices Laura had made. But old habits died hard and suspicion ran deep. One night, as Laura rested in a small chamber provided by the Vryn, she heard footsteps outside. She opened the door cautiously, finding the Queen standing there. Her wounds had healed completely, her iridescent scales gleaming under the soft light. Without speaking, the Queen extended a hand, inviting Laura to follow her. They walked through the colony in silence, the Queen leading the way to a secluded garden hidden among the crystalline structures. Here, plants native to the Vryn homeworld grew in abundance, their colors vibrant and otherworldly. The Queen gestured toward a patch of flowers which began to bloom as Laura approached. It was a gift, a symbol of gratitude and hope. Laura knelt beside the flowers, her fingers brushing against their delicate petals. For the first time since arriving, she allowed herself to feel a sense of peace. She had come so far, faced so much, and yet here she was, surrounded by beauty and life. It was a reminder of why she had chosen this path, to heal, to connect, to make a difference. Back in the lab, Daniel continued to assist the Vryn, though his thoughts often turned to Earth. He wondered what the future held for them once this mission was complete. Would they be hailed as heroes, or would their actions spark controversy? He didn't know, and for now, he pushed those worries aside. What mattered most was the present, the lives they were saving, the bonds they were forming. As the days turned into weeks, the colony began to recover. The streets, once empty and silent, now buzzed with activity. Children played among the crystalline towers, their laughter echoing through the air. The elders organized celebrations, honoring Laura and Daniel for their contributions. Though the humans remained outsiders in many ways, they were no longer seen as enemies. Yet even as the colony thrived, danger loomed on the horizon. The mercenaries who had pursued them earlier had not given up. Their ship reappeared in the distance, its weapons trained on the colony. Panic spread among the Vryn, who scrambled to prepare for an attack. Laura and Daniel joined them, determined to defend what they had fought so hard to protect. The battle that followed was fierce and chaotic. The mercenaries launched wave after wave of assaults, their ships unleashing devastating blasts of energy. The Vryn fought back valiantly, their advanced technology giving them an edge. But the enemy was relentless, unwilling to retreat. In the midst of the chaos, Laura and Daniel found themselves separated from the main group. They took refuge in a damaged structure, using debris to shield themselves from incoming fire. "We can't let them win," Laura said, her voice trembling with determination. "Not after everything we've done." Daniel nodded, gripping his weapon tightly. "Then we fight." Together they emerged from their hiding spot, joining the Vryn in their defense. The Queen herself entered the fray, her strength bolstered by Laura's earlier treatments. She moved with grace and power, her glowing form striking fear into the hearts of the mercenaries. Slowly but surely the tide began to turn. The combined forces of the Vryn, Laura, and Daniel overwhelmed the attackers, forcing them to retreat. When the dust settled, the colony stood victorious, but not unscathed. Many structures were damaged, and some Vryn had fallen during the battle. As the survivors gathered to tend to the wounded, Laura looked out over the colony, her heart heavy with emotion. They had won, but at a cost. Still, she knew they had achieved something extraordinary. Against all odds, they had saved a species from extinction and forged a bond that transcended worlds. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression weary but resolute. "We did it," he said softly. Laura nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she whispered, "we did." The aftermath of the battle left the Vryn colony battered but alive. Smoke curled from damaged structures, and the air carried the faint scent of burnt metal. Laura stood amidst the ruins, her body aching from exhaustion. Every muscle screamed for rest, but she couldn't stop moving. There was too much to do, too many wounded to tend to, too many lives still hanging by a thread. Daniel worked beside her, his hands steady despite the fatigue etched into his face. Together, they moved through the makeshift medical tents, offering what little comfort they could. The Vryn medics were skilled, but their numbers had been thinned by the conflict. Laura and Daniel's presence made a difference, even if it was only in small ways. As they treated the injured, Laura noticed something strange. Some of the Vryn who had come into contact with her during the battle showed signs of rapid healing, similar to the Queen. It seemed her blood wasn't just useful as a serum, it had an immediate effect when directly applied. This discovery filled her with both hope and unease. If her mere touch could heal, it also meant she remained a potential danger to others. The Queen approached them later that evening, her movements graceful despite the lingering tension in the air. She placed a hand on Laura's shoulder, her glowing eyes locking onto hers. Through their silent connection, Laura felt gratitude, but also urgency. The mercenaries might have retreated, but they wouldn't stay away forever. The colony needed to prepare, and Laura's role was far from over. Laura nodded, understanding without words. She turned to Daniel, who was patching up a young Vryn child. "We need to teach them how to defend themselves," she said quietly. "If those mercenaries come back, we won't be able to hold them off alone." Daniel looked up, his expression grim. "You're right, but how do we do that? Their technology is advanced, but they don't seem used to fighting like this." "We adapt," Laura replied. "We combine their knowledge with ours. That's our only chance." Over the next few days, Laura and Daniel worked tirelessly to train the Vryn in combat strategies. They taught them how to use human weapons, which were simpler and more efficient than the Vryn's intricate tools. At first, the Vryn struggled, unused to such crude methods. But under Laura and Daniel's guidance, they began to improve, their natural agility making them quick learners. Meanwhile, the Queen oversaw efforts to repair the colony. Her leadership inspired her people, rallying them to rebuild what had been lost. Slowly, the crystalline towers began to shine once more, their surfaces repaired and polished. Life returned to the streets, though the scars of the battle remained visible. Laura pushed herself harder than ever, her body growing weaker with each passing day. The repeated extractions of her blood had taken a toll, leaving her pale and fragile. Daniel noticed, his concern growing deeper with every glance at her. One night, as they sat together in a quiet corner of the colony, he finally spoke up. "You can't keep doing this," he said firmly. "You're going to collapse if you don't rest." "I'll rest when this is over," Laura replied, her voice soft but resolute. "There's too much at stake." "And what happens if you push yourself too far?" Daniel pressed. "What happens to them then?" Laura didn't answer. She wanted to believe she could keep going, but deep down, she knew Daniel was right. Her strength was fading, and soon she wouldn't be able to help anymore. The thought terrified her, but she refused to let it show. Instead, she focused on the task at hand, determined to see the Vryn through to safety. One morning, as the sun rose over the gas giant, the colony received unexpected visitors. A group of humans arrived aboard a sleek vessel, its design unmistakably Earth-made. Laura recognized the insignia on their uniforms immediately. It was Earth Command. They had finally tracked them down. Captain Ryan Mitchell stepped off the ship, his expression unreadable. He approached Laura and Daniel, his gaze sweeping over the colony before settling on them. "You've caused quite a stir," he said, his tone neutral. "Command wants answers." Laura straightened, meeting his gaze squarely. "We did what we had to do," she said. "These people were dying. We couldn't turn our backs on them." Mitchell studied her for a moment, then sighed. "I'm not here to judge you, I'm here to bring you home." "But the Vryn still need us," Daniel interjected. "We can't leave now." "The decision isn't yours to make," Mitchell replied. His voice softened slightly. "Look at yourselves. You're running on fumes. You've done enough." Laura shook her head, her resolve unwavering. "We stay. If Earth Command has a problem with that, they can deal with it." Mitchell hesitated, clearly torn. Finally, he nodded. "All right. But don't expect us to bail you out if things go south." With that, he and his crew departed, leaving Laura and Daniel behind. As the ship disappeared into the horizon, Laura felt a mix of relief and dread. They had bought themselves more time, but the clock was still ticking. In the weeks that followed, the colony grew stronger. The Vryn adopted the combat techniques Laura and Daniel had taught them, fortifying their defenses against future attacks. The plague continued to recede, thanks to the synthetic enzyme now being mass-produced. Hope began to take root, spreading through the population like wildfire. But Laura's health continued to decline. Each extraction left her weaker, her movement slower and less certain. Daniel begged her to stop, but she refused. "Not yet," she would say, "just a little longer." Finally, one evening, the Queen approached her. She led Laura to a secluded chamber deep within the colony, where a vial of glowing liquid rested on a pedestal. The Queen placed a hand on Laura's chest, her telepathic voice echoing in her mind. "This is for you," she said. "A gift. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten." Laura stared at the vial, her vision blurring with tears. She didn't fully understand what it was, but she knew it was important. She accepted it with trembling hands, feeling a surge of gratitude and sadness. The next day, Laura collapsed. Daniel rushed to her side, panic gripping his heart. The Vryn gathered around, their expressions somber. For hours, they worked to stabilize her, using everything they had learned from her teachings. Finally, she opened her eyes, weak but alive. "You scared me," Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry," Laura replied, her voice barely audible. "But it's not over yet." And she was right. Though her body had reached its limit, her spirit remained unbroken. The colony was safe for now. The mercenaries hadn't returned, and the Vryn were stronger than ever. Laura knew her time with them was coming to an end, but she also knew she had given them a fighting chance. As she lay there, surrounded by the people she had fought so hard to save, Laura allowed herself a rare moment of peace. She had crossed galaxies, faced impossible odds, and risked everything for a species she barely understood. And in doing so, she had found a purpose greater than herself. The Queen knelt beside her, her glowing form casting a soft light over the room. She placed a hand on Laura's forehead, her touch gentle and warm. Through their silent connection, Laura felt a single word echo in her mind: "Thank you." Tears streamed down her face as she closed her eyes, knowing she had done all she could. Whatever happened next, she was ready. Laura's recovery was slow but steady. The Vryn cared for her with a tenderness that surprised both her and Daniel. They brought her food and medicine, their glowing forms hovering nearby as if afraid to leave her side. For days, she rested, in the quiet chamber where the Queen had given her the mysterious vial. Its contents glowed faintly on the pedestal beside her bed, a constant reminder of the bond she had formed with the Vryn. Daniel stayed close, rarely leaving her side. He helped her sit up when she grew too weak to move, held her hand during moments of pain, and reassured her when doubt crept into her mind. "You've done more than anyone could ask," he told her one evening as they sat together in silence. "It's okay to let go now." But letting go wasn't easy. Laura knew the colony still needed her guidance, even if her body couldn't keep up anymore. She spent hours teaching the Vryn everything she knew about medicine and biology, pouring her knowledge into them until her voice grew hoarse. The elders watched her efforts with quiet admiration, their distrust long replaced by gratitude. The Queen visited often, her presence a source of comfort. One day she placed a hand on Laura's shoulder, her telepathic voice soft but clear. "Your journey here is complete," she said. "You have given us life, now it is time for you to return to yours." Laura nodded, though the words stung. She didn't want to leave, not yet. But deep down, she knew the Queen was right. Her strength was fading, and staying longer would only burden those she had come to care for. It was time to go home. With heavy hearts, Laura and Daniel prepared to depart. The Vryn gathered around the scout ship, their expressions a mix of sadness and gratitude. Many stepped forward to thank them, their glowing eyes filled with emotion. Some pressed small tokens into their hands, crystalline fragments, delicate carvings, and other artifacts from their world. Each gift carried meaning, a symbol of the bond they had forged. The Queen approached last, holding out a small pouch. Inside was the vial she had given Laura earlier. "Take this," she said. "It holds the essence of our people. Use it wisely." Laura accepted the pouch, her fingers trembling as she closed it. She didn't fully understand what the vial contained, but she felt its importance. It was a piece of the Vryn, a reminder of all they had shared. She bowed her head in gratitude, unable to find the words to express how much it meant. As they boarded the scout ship, the Vryn lined the platform, watching silently. The Queen raised a hand in farewell, her gaze steady and warm. Laura returned, the gesture, tears streaming down her face as the engines roared to life. For a moment she thought about staying, about continuing to fight for the colony, but she knew her place was no longer there. She had done what she came to do. Now, it was time to let the Vryn stand on their own. The journey back to Earth was quiet. Laura and Daniel spoke little, each lost in their own thoughts. Laura clutched the pouch tightly, feeling the weight of the vial inside. She wondered what awaited them back home. Would Earth Command praise their actions or condemn them? Would humanity see the value in what they had done, or fear it? When they finally arrived, the sight of Earth filled Laura with conflicting emotions. The blue-green planet was breathtakingly beautiful, yet it felt distant after everything she had experienced. As the scout ship descended through the atmosphere, landing at a secure facility, Laura braced herself for whatever came next. A team of officials greeted them, their faces unreadable. They escorted Laura and Daniel to a conference room where questions poured forth like a flood. What had happened? Why had they disobeyed orders? Was the alien queen truly healed? Laura answered calmly, explaining everything without hesitation. She spoke of the plague, the enzyme in her blood, and the sacrifices made to save the Vryn. She showed them the vial, describing its significance without revealing its secrets. The officials listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to awe. When Laura finished, one of them leaned forward, his voice low but earnest. "You've done something extraordinary," he said. "Something we may never fully understand." Laura nodded, her heart swelling with pride and relief. She hadn't expected praise, but hearing those words validated everything she had endured. Still, she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Humanity was wary of the unknown, and the Vryn remained a mystery to most. Bridging that gap would take time and trust. In the weeks that followed, Laura became an advocate for interspecies cooperation. She shared her story with scientists, politicians, and the public, emphasizing the importance of understanding rather than fear. The vial served as a symbol of hope, proof that even the smallest connection could lead to monumental change. Daniel supported her every step of the way, his loyalty unwavering. Together, They founded a research initiative aimed at exploring the possibilities of interspecies medicine. The enzyme in Laura's blood became the foundation of countless breakthroughs, offering new treatments for diseases once thought incurable. Though her adventures among the stars were over, Laura found purpose in sharing what she had learned. She often thought of the Vryn, wondering how they were faring. Occasionally, she received messages from the colony, updates on their progress and expressions of gratitude. Each one filled her with warmth, reminding her of the bonds she had forged. Years passed and Laura's story became legend, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and unity in a universe often divided by fear. She continued her work, dedicating her life to bridging the gap between humanity and the cosmos. The vial remained safely in her lab, a reminder of the Queen's gift and the infinite possibilities awaiting those willing to embrace the unknown. One evening, as Laura stood gazing at the stars, she felt a familiar sensation, a fleeting touch in her mind, like a whisper carried across the void. She smiled, knowing the Queen was watching over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Laura was ready to face them. After all, she had already crossed galaxies and changed the course of two species' futures. And so, Laura's journey ended not with a bang, but with a quiet certainty. She had done her part, leaving behind a legacy of compassion and discovery. The stars above seemed brighter now, their light a promise of endless potential. For Laura, the adventure never truly ended. It simply evolved, carrying her forward into a future she had helped create.